Adequate notice of this meeting was given to the public 48 hours in advance of the date setting forth the date, time, location, and type of meeting. Notice was sent to the Daily Record, the Observer Tribune, and the Washington Township Clerk, and was posted on the district website at www.wtschools.org. All please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. We're going to start with our reorganization meeting agenda, report on the annual school election, and oaths of office. Election results reported as per the statement of determination received by the Morris County Clerk. A 3-year term, congratulations to Melanie Bratton and Mike Catano, and re-election for Rob Waskis. I'm now going to ask the 3 board members to come to the front to read the oaths of office. I state your name.
I, Rob Waskis,
Do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same and to the governments established in the United States and this state, under the authority of the people. I state your name. Do solemnly swear or affirm that I possess the qualifications prescribed by law for the office of Member of Board of Education, am not disqualified as a voter pursuant to RS 19-4-1, am not disqualified due conviction of a crime or offense pursuant to NJSA 18A 12-1, and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all duties of that office according to the best of my ability. Congratulations. And now we're going to move on to the election of officers. I'd like to accept nominations for the office of Board President.
I'd like to nominate John Livingston as Board President.
Are there any other nominations for Board President? Can I have a motion to close the nominations?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Can I have a roll call? Oh, all in favor, sorry.
Aye.
Thank you. Can I have a roll call for the motion for Donald Mixon?
Mrs. Ryan? Yes. Sorry. Mrs. DeSico?
No.
Mrs. Catano? Mr. Catano?
Yes.
Vieira is not.
Is she?
Mrs. Vieira?
No.
Mrs. Bratton?
Yes.
Mr. Waskis?
No.
Hawley?
Yes.
Olmington?
Yes.
You'll try Mrs. Vieira again?
So Mr. Oldmixon will do the vice president nomination.
Can we have discussion?
Yes.
I just wanted to take a moment to explain my decision tonight because I don't want my decision to come off as petty or a decision that I had made lightly. I just wanted to share that the reason why I ultimately decided to not provide my support to Mr. Oldmixon is that over the past year, I've made an effort. I've made every effort possible to support our president. Although he was not my first choice, I still felt that making an effort to build a relationship would prove far more positive for our district than opposition. I've compromised and made concessions in an effort to bring some cohesiveness to our board. Unfortunately, that willingness has not always been returned by a lot of board members. Last month, I had a conversation with Mr. Oldmixon with an offer of my support for his presidency in exchange for support of myself or Rob for VP. Now, while I know VP can be seen as a ceremonious position, I explained that the willingness would be seen as an offer of good faith to present as a united front and demonstrate a willingness to work together. Unfortunately, Mr. Oldmixon declined my offer and instead decided to promote an individual who is unfortunately too busy to even fulfill the minimum requirement of holding the monthly regular committee meetings for the committee that they chair. That all said, I still wish John the best of luck as president because I really want to start this year off right, and I'm really excited for our new superintendent. I know she will do great things, but I felt it was necessary for me to explain my decision and my actions tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm
sorry, what? Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, I just have to resolve that in accordance with NJSA 18A 15-1, the Washington Township Board of Education in the County of Morris, New Jersey elects John Oldmixon as president of the Board of Education effective January 7, 2025 for a term prescribed by law.
Thank you. At this time, we're moving on to agenda item 2B, which is the motion to nominate board vice president. So at this time, does anybody want to make a nomination for vice president?
I'd like to nominate Jen Ryan.
Are there any other nominations? Okay. Motion to close nominations?
John, I just wanted to let you know that Isabel texted me. She says she's saying, when it was voting, she was trying to say yes, yes, yes.
It doesn't.
She
matter.
can't
She
hear.
can't.
I know, I'm just-
No, but she can't vote via text. It's in the policy.
No,
and bylaws.
I'm not
Oh.
suggesting that. I'm just letting you know she is trying to respond. She just wanted everyone to
Okay.
know.
Okay. Thank you for letting me know.
Sorry.
Okay. So at this time, I'm going to make a motion to close nominations.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then we're moving on to roll call for the vice president.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Sierra,
No.
No.
Mr. Waskis,
No.
Mr. Holly,
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So should we try Mrs. Vieira again?
I'm on it. Hey,
Can we do that
Isabel,
via
you're
phone?
on speakerphone. We're voting
Her-
for vice president.
Stacy, weigh in on our bylaws.
Isabel, can you hear me?
I thought
Isabel, we're voting for vice president. We're voting for Jen Ryan. Do you say yes for that, for vice president?
Yes, yes, I vote yes for Jen for vice president.
Sounds good to me.
I'll just ask the question, is that an official vote count? Ask Stacy.
Your bylaws, as far as I know, doesn't indicate that it has to be a virtual meet, so if she's participating remotely, as long as she can participate in the meeting, then it would be counted.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. 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 It's okay.
Okay, moving on. So resolve that in accordance with NJSA 18A 15-1, the Washington Township Board of Education in the County of Morris, New Jersey, elects Jen Ryan as Vice President of the Board of Education, effective January 7th, 2025, for a term prescribed by law. Moving on to agenda item.
I'm sorry, John, may I just make a statement real quick?
Sure.
So, I've had a chance to work with Jen for a couple of years. I didn't know her beforehand, but as a mother of four and a practicing attorney, I think, she's going to do a great job, and she's got a lot of professional accomplishments that that can get in the way. As someone who owns a couple businesses myself, I totally understand that. And this is a volunteer position, and everyone endeavors to do their best, but she does a fantastic job. I just wanted to congratulate you on being vice president.
Thanks, John. I appreciate that. I guess in defense of myself, we haven't had meetings for governance because, as everybody knows, or I guess should know, governance deals with policies. And as it was done to us at the end of the year, when a board is losing 3 members, except for Rob is staying, so there's a turnover and we have a new superintendent, I personally think it's inappropriate to be making policy decisions with a board that's turning over. I didn't appreciate it being done to me. I know that other members of the board didn't appreciate it as well. And so we have been holding off on meetings. The other thing that's coming down the pike is that we are changing our policies from Strauss-Esme to New Jersey school boards. Those are not done yet, and it's going to be an enormous undertaking for all of the people on the governance committee to go through all those policies. So rather than hold pointless meetings where we're not discussing policy, we don't have the new policies, I don't hold meetings just to hold meetings. That's a waste of my valuable time. So where I think, there are some things that we could do, some housekeeping, to me it seemed more important to hold off until we have a lot of heavy lifting to do, which is coming down.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion before we move forward? Okay. Moving on to agenda item 3, annual appointments. I'd like to make a motion to move agenda items 3A through 3D on tonight's agenda.
Second?
Any discussion? Roll call.
Mrs. Ryan?
Yes.
Mrs. DeSica?
Yes.
Mr. Catano?
Yes.
Mrs. Vieira? Voting or?
I'm gonna say she's probably not gonna be able to vote. Does it make a difference? I mean, does it impact?
I thought, Stacy, you said she needs to be present for the
If she's
meeting.
participating.
Isabel, we need you to vote yes or no on the passage of 3A on the education.
3A through 3D.
3A and 3D. Yes.
Mrs. Succi?
Yes.
Mrs. Bratton?
Yes.
Mr. Waskis?
Yes.
Mr. Hawley?
Yes.
Mr. Oldmix?
Yes. Moving on to agenda items 4A through 4D, I'd like to make a motion to move those agenda items on tonight's agenda.
Second?
Any discussion? Roll call.
Mrs. Ryan?
Yes.
Mrs. DeSico?
Yes.
Mr. Catano?
Yes.
Mrs. Vieira?
Isabel, you're up again on the vote.
Mrs. Succi?
Yes.
Mrs. Bratton?
Yes.
Mr. Waskis?
Yes.
Mr. Hawley?
Yes.
Mr. Oldmixon?
Yes. Okay. Okay, moving on to the regular meeting agenda. President's comments. Sorry, just getting my notes together here. Okay. Good evening, Washington Township. I hope everyone enjoyed time off with friends and family during the winter break. I want to welcome everyone to the first board meeting of the 2025 calendar year and wish everyone a happy new year. I will keep this short and sweet. I wanted to thank my fellow board members for choosing me as board president for another year. I'm hoping we can continue to work together towards achieving some of the multi-year goals we have in place, as well as succeeding and setting new ones. Long Valley, Washington Township is a great town, a place I have called home for almost my entire life, with fantastic schools and teachers. There's nothing I want more than to protect and further that great reputation. Although all of us here on the board will disagree from time to time, discussion and debate is healthy. All of us here ran to be on the board for our own specific reasons, but at the end of the day, I know we can all come together and make decisions for the betterment of the children, staff, and community. And with that, I would like to officially welcome and turn the meeting over to our new superintendent, Antonella Lind, for superintendent's comments.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and I would also like to extend my thank you. It has been a wonderful start to the time here for me, and I thank everyone immensely. This evening, I have 3 reports to report surrounding HIB. In accordance with the New Jersey's Anti-Bullying Bill of Rights Act, the results of the HIB-related investigations are going to be as follows. This report that I am going to be reporting on is this reporting period. So currently, our district totals for this reporting period are 3 reports that were unfounded following the school's investigations, and 0 reports that were founded following the school's investigations. The number of reports of alleged HIB received by each school is as follows. Benedict A. Cuccinella School had 0, Flocktown Cosman School 1, Old Farmers Road School had 0, and Long Valley Middle School had 2. Furthermore, just breaking down each individual school, Benedict A. Cuccinella School with 0 reports then also had 0 unfounded and 0 founded. Flocktown Cosman School with the report of 1 had 1 unfounded and 0 founded. Old Farmers Road School had 0 reports, therefore 0 unfounded and 0 founded. And Long Valley Middle School had 2 reports, 2 unfounded, 0 founded. That concludes the report for this reporting period. The next report is also HIB, but this is the mid-year report. This is reporting period 1, and this spans from September of 2024 to December of 2024. So I emphasize that because that's our mid-year report, and so the numbers are going to reflect that. In totality, as district-wide up until now, we've had 30 reports, and of the 30, 20 are unfounded and 10 are founded. Breaking it down even further by school, the reports per each building: Benedict A. Cuccinella School is 6, Flocktown Cosman School is 10, Old Farmers Road School is 3, and Long Valley Middle School is 11, again for a total of 30. But then to go even further, for each individual building, per their reports, Benedict A. Cuccinella School, with the reports of 6, had 2 unfounded and 4 founded. Flocktown Cosman School had 10 reports, again 7 were unfounded and 3 were founded. Old Farmers Road School had 3 reports, and of those 3, they were unfounded and 0 were founded. Long Valley Middle School had 11, 8 were unfounded and 3 were founded. And that concludes the mid-year report for the HIB that again spans from September to December of 2024, that first reporting period. Lastly, this will be the mid-year public hearing on school violence, vandalism, and harassment, intimidation, or bullying, 2024 to 2025 school year. This is our mid-year reporting on this as well, and this is the reporting period 1 for this. In accordance with the New Jersey statute 18A 17-46, the chief school administrator must schedule and conduct a public hearing for the purpose of reporting to the Board of Education all acts of violence, vandalism, harassment, intimidation, or bullying which occurred during the previous school year. Included in this report is the violence and vandalism data submitted under the Student Safety Data System to the New Jersey Department of Education for the previous school year. And this reporting for the mid-year, I will break down per building, per school. There were 4 incidents of violence and vandalism at Benedict A. Cuccinella School, 4 incidents being of harassment, intimidation, and bullying. There were 5 incidents of violence and vandalism at Flocktown Cosman School, 1 incident of sexual contact, 1 other incident leading to removal, and 3 incidents of harassment, intimidation, and bullying. There were 0 incidents of violence and vandalism at Old Farmers Road School, And there are 3 incidents of violence and vandalism at Long Valley Middle School. Of those 3, it's harassment, intimidation, and bullying. And that concludes my reports for HIB this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. I was actually going to bring this up in unfinished business, but I guess maybe it's a good time to just say it now. I know last meeting we had an executive session actually prior to the meeting, and as a result of that, we kind of formulated that we were going to maybe have some sort of an assembly, some sort of a community maybe night or something like that to kind of update the community on HIBS, what it is, because we actually, and myself, learned a lot about it during this executive session. So I thought, we as a board felt it may be beneficial to the community. I just wanted to reiterate that is still something we are working on. Unfortunately, it's been a little bit slow moving given the turnover in the board. Our new superintendent is still meeting with stakeholders and getting acclimated. So I just wanted to, again, I was going to bring it up in unfinished business, but I figured it might not be a bad time to just kind of dovetail off of the HIB report now. So I just wanted to update everybody on that. There is another presentation tonight from Charlene Peterson, who I believe is supposed to be here sometime around 7:30. So we're going to wait to have, when she arrives, where she can give her presentation. I don't know if formally we have to amend the agenda. Or is everybody okay if we basically, do we have to amend the agenda?
I think as long as
Okay, I mean, because it kind of depends on when she comes, so everybody's okay with that? Okay. All right, so moving on to correspondence. This month, we have emails from G. Moss and K. Karajat. And then moving on to committee reports, I believe we have a finance committee report.
Yes. Excuse me. Finance and Facilities Committee met January 2nd. Present were Jess, Lindsay, John, Antonella, Katie, Stephanie, and myself. The first thing the committee discussed was the possibility of adding additional ThinkPads for substitute teachers. This was in response to an email that the board had received regarding some technical difficulties faced regarding technology integration for substitute teachers. And the district is going to continue to work to meet our existing goal of having BenQ boards in all of our classrooms. Right now, we're sitting at about 60% of classrooms with BenQ boards. So we're going to continue to march towards that goal so we have that level of consistency with all of our smart boards. And we're also going to work with the technology team for processes and procedures for substitute teachers as a form of support before pursuing a costly material solution. Next, the committee discussed the ongoing Class 3 changes. Our new superintendent, having at that point been on the job a whole day, wanted additional time to meet with stakeholders before any further action was taken. The committee discussed the 25-26 budget. The district will be utilizing the full 2% tax levy and is looking at potential allowable adjustments to the budget, such as the health benefits allowance, to help us meet our district goals as well as contribute to our capital reserves. The Cuccinella roof is certainly always on my mind when it comes to that. Then we discussed the HVAC rebid for LVMS. This is agenda item number 13 tonight. There's a motion to reject the bids and allow the district architect, Brett Somjen, to negotiate with the contractors. I shouldn't say we are, but the entire state of New Jersey right now is experiencing some difficulty due to the ROD grants issued to districts for roofing as well as HVAC, and that has caused the demand to skyrocket for those types of projects. And our architect believes that the tight timeline that we had originally proposed to complete the project might be limiting the number of bidders we get. So we're going to look to adjust that through subsequent negotiations. We then discussed additional referendum updates. The STEAM spaces and the LVMS culinary space are going out to bid on the 29th of this month. And the administrative team was able to review and provide their input on the color, paint, flooring, and other aesthetic design choices for the STEAM spaces before going out to bid. So we're grateful for them for providing their input. Then we received folders from Mascios that contained their November report on some fairly exciting things that they're doing in food service, as exciting as that can be for elementary and middle schoolers. We requested that they provide an electronic copy of those reports so we could forward them out to the rest of the community more easily than copying the ones that we received. Then the committee reviewed a proposal by our BA regarding student accident insurance. She got a quote in the amount of $7,800 for district student accident insurance, and the committee recommends continuing to keep the supplemental student accident insurance available to parents, which is what we currently offer. Finally, the committee discussed the preschool tuition rate and recommend keeping that rate the same at $950 per month to remain accessible for families. Subject to questions, that is the finance and facilities report.
Thanks, Rob. Moving on to public comment on agenda items. If anybody has a public comment on agenda items, please approach the microphone, state your name, address, and you'll have 3 minutes to provide any comment. Okay, moving on to approval of minutes. I'd like to make a motion to approve the December 10th executive session meeting minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Moving on to the December, so I'd like to make a motion to approve the December 10th regular meeting minutes.
Excuse me, is Isabel still here? Am I counting her vote?
Is she still on the,
She's just dropped. Just keep going.
You just have to make a notation of what time she dropped out.
Just now.
I think she's trying to get back on.
are we waiting or do we, is that counted as a full voice vote?
I'm not counting her vote.
No,
I didn't
hers
hear
would
her.
not be counted.
Okay,
Okay.
okay, so the December 10th regular meeting minutes, I'd like to make a motion to approve the December 10th regular meeting minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions?
Yes.
Okay. And we don't have Isabel still? No. Okay. Okay, moving on to education. I'll open it up. I know Cindy was the committee chair. If nobody wants to move it, I will, but I'll open it up if anybody wants to move education.
I'd like to make a motion to move education numbers 1 through 9.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, roll call.
Mrs. Ryan?
Yes.
Mrs. DeSico?
Yes.
Mr. Catano?
Yes.
Mrs. Vieira? Mrs. Succi?
Yes.
Mrs. Bratton?
Yes.
Mr. Waskis?
Yes.
Mr. Holly?
Yes.
Mr. Oldmixon?
Yes. Okay, finance. Can I have somebody please move finance?
Finance would like to move items number 10 through 14 on tonight's agenda.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Mrs. Ryan?
Yes.
Mrs. DeSico?
Yes.
Mr. Catano?
Yes, but I'm
Mrs.
abstaining from number 10.
Mrs. Vieira? Mrs. Succi?
Yes.
Mrs. Bratton?
Yes, with an abstention with number 10.
Mr. Waskis?
Yes.
Mr. Holly?
Yes.
Mr. Oldmixon?
Yes. Similarly with education, our prior personnel chair is no longer on the board, so I'll leave it if anybody wants to move it. If not, I will.
Personnel would like to move numbers, agenda item numbers 15 through 23.
Okay. Second?
Second. Oh, well.
Do I have a second?
Asking or giving?
I'm asking for a second, sorry. Any discussion? Roll call?
Mrs. Ryan?
Yes.
Mrs. DeSico?
Yes.
Mr. Catano?
Yes.
Mrs. Vieira? Mrs. Succi?
Yes.
Mrs. Bratton?
Yes.
Mr. Waskis?
Yes.
Mr. Holly?
Yes.
Mr. Oldmixon?
Yes. Okay, moving on to policy. I'd like to make a motion to read for the second time the policies under agenda item 14. I'm sorry, 24. Do I have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Okay, roll call.
Mrs. Ryan?
Yes.
Mrs. DeSico?
Yes.
Mr. Catano?
Yes.
Mrs. Succi?
Yes.
Mrs. Bratton?
Yes.
Mr. Waskis?
Yes.
Mr. Holly?
Yes.
Mr. Oldmixon?
Yes. And I'd like to make a motion to read for the first time policies under agenda item number 25.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Roll call.
Mrs. Ryan?
Yes.
Mrs. DeSico?
Yes.
Mr. Catano?
Yes.
Mrs. Succi?
Yes.
Mrs. Bratton?
Yes.
Mr. Waskis?
Yes.
Mr. Holly?
Yes.
Mr. Oldmixon?
Yes.
Isabel's back.
I think we missed
Isabel
the...
voted yes.
Okay. Moving on to unfinished business. Does anybody have any unfinished business? Does anybody have any new business? Okay. Moving on to public comment. This is public comment on all items. If you do have a public comment, please approach the microphone and state your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hello, Tara Lagos, 30 Zellers Road, Long Valley, proud teacher of Old Farmers Road School. First of all, welcome to Mike, welcome back Rob, welcome Melanie. Congratulations, Jen and John. Speaking on behalf of a community member, a proud product of the Washington Township school system, proud teacher again at Old Farmers Road School, a husband who is a proud product of the Washington Township school system, 2 children, grown, 24 and 22, one going into education. I want to thank you for your service, but to quote John, Washington Township is an amazing community, right? I'm encouraged by the new year. Little weary about how it started off at the meeting, I'm not going to lie. But as a community member and as an educator, putting our kids first is my number 1 priority. Number 1. Did I say welcome, Mike?
You did.
Okay, just making sure. It's been a long day. And I look forward to you all working together and leading by example. I totally agree. You're not going to agree on everything. I believe a cornerstone of our democracy, as I've said before at previous statements, is the ability to disagree, but to lead by example, to listen. And again, if we keep the forefront of the best interest of our kids, you can't go wrong. So congratulations, welcome, and let's get her done. Happy New Year.
Is there any other public comment? Okay. I just want to thank you, Mrs. Lagos, for the kind words. I know we don't agree on everything. We spent a lot of time, especially this past year, superintendent search and a lot of other things. But I think all in all, we all are here for the kids, the district, and we're going to do what's right for everybody. So thank you. Did you want to say anything?
I agree with you, and I think it's going to be a great year ahead. And I can't state enough how excited I am. As reiterated prior to just my start even here, you could really feel not just kind of the climate that I'm surrounded with, but most definitely the integrated, the culture that's here. And like I said, I'm very excited and looking forward to working with absolutely everybody on the board. I've already had the ability to speak with everyone, and I'm continuing that, including just working with stakeholders and speaking with everyone, between teachers and the community. So I'm very much looking forward to this school year, and I think it's going to be absolutely wonderful. So I can't agree more. Yeah, I'm very proud. I've been at a lot of events already with the students, and they just, it's just such a great community, and they work together, and they really show exactly what you just said, the example of teamwork and coming together and being prideful in their work and having confidence. And so that's what we need to do, is just keep the bar raised high, and we'll all work towards that as well.
Thank you. Moving on to district distinctions, I actually have a pretty lengthy list. So I'll start, I'm going to cover all 4 schools. So Old Farmers Road School, December was a busy month at OFRS. The 2nd grade students participated in a fun and educational colonial event. Parents were invited to join the students in playing colonial games and engaging in colonial arts and cultural experiences. It was a great opportunity for students to reflect on their studies of colonial life and their roles and responsibilities of community members during this important time in American history. Bravo to Mrs. English, our 5th grade students, for an outstanding and uplifting holiday concert. The orchestra and band performed Merrily We Roll Along, Jingle Bells, and Hot Cross Buns. The chorus sang Hot Chocolate, Hanukkah Night, In Winter, Who Put the Presents Under the Tree, and Am I Ready? And it's a very musically talented group. Finally, the entire school from preschool through 5th grade came together for a heartwarming school-wide sing-along. They sang some of their favorites, including Jingle Bells, the Dreidel Song, and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. And this wonderful tradition fosters a sense of community and belonging within OFRS. Moving on to LVMS. LVMS completed a round of school spirit activities prior to the winter recess. We were thrilled to see so many LVMS Panthers showing their school spirit. Thank you, LVMS Student Council, for your coordination of these fun and festive spirit events. Currently, 2 8th grade houses are leading the way in the annual school spirit competition, but it's a tightly contested matchup. Thank you for the many LVMS families who participated in the annual Toys for Tots drive. Your generosity made a significant difference for so many children this holiday season. Shout out to the WTPD PBA for their hard work coordinating this drive on behalf of our school community. Our winter holiday concerts were well attended, and we're proud of our student musicians, band, orchestra, and chorus for their fine holiday performances. Likewise, we want to congratulate 8th grade violinist Beryl Lang, who was accepted to the New Jersey Music Teachers Association Regional Orchestra on January 4th. Moving on to Flocktown Cosmin. We're all excited for all that the new year holds. Buddy classes are in full swing, and we look forward to our buddy lunches next week. These opportunities are amazing and afford older and younger students a chance to meet, share, and learn from each other. Our PTA is active as ever with our PTA school store ongoing every Friday and our first meeting of 2025 next Wednesday at 7 p.m. And don't forget about Wolf Wednesdays, where we love seeing the whole school in their wolf gear or school colors. And last but not least, for Flocktown, the Mars Rover Challenge was exceptional. Board members Mrs. DeSico and Mr. Capagrasso attended, as well as Superintendent Lynn. The students really did a phenomenal job on their projects and their presentations, and the teamwork is commendable. And then lastly, at Cuccinella, we are thrilled to celebrate the successful completion of our 5th grade ambassador program for the first trimester, led by our outstanding guidance counselor, Mrs. Kyra McCool. This program provides 5th grade students with the chance to take on leadership roles that contribute meaningfully to our school community. During the first trimester, approximately 20 students volunteered as library helpers, morning announcers, door holders, kindergarten and first grade helpers, recess equipment managers, and bucket filling ticket collectors. These roles gave students the opportunity to build valuable leadership and teamwork skills while fostering a strong sense of responsibility. We are incredibly proud of our ambassadors and deeply grateful for Mrs. McCool for organizing this impactful program. We look forward to welcoming even more participants in the next trimester, and we will continue to inspire leadership and collaboration throughout our school. Building on the success of the ambassador program, a group of 14 5th grade ambassadors presented their first whole school meeting on Tuesday, January 7th. This event included 2 engaging 20-minute presentations, one for pre-K through 2nd grade and another for 3rd through 5th grade. These meetings offer our ambassadors the chance to educate their peers about important themes and promote a positive school climate through role-playing and skits. This meeting's theme was kindness and was an overwhelming success, with students enjoying the fun and meaningful performances. We're excited to see what themes the ambassadors will explore next. Finally, we'd like to take a moment to recognize 2 exceptional members of our transportation team, Sherry Gass and Karen Bruseo. I apologize if I mispronounced that. Who retired as of January 1st, 2025. Sherry and Karen have dedicated many years to ensuring the safety and well-being of countless students. Their professionalism, care, and commitment will be greatly missed, and we extend our heartfelt gratitude for their outstanding service and wish them all the best in this new chapter of their lives. And Charlene Peterson is here. So we're going to move back to the presentation if you're ready. Okay. Perfect timing.
slide the top, Stephanie, up above that.
That would be great, thanks.
I can't help you with that.
Appreciate if you guys want to stay, but that's usually one way to clear the room. Yeah.
Go for all the trouble.
I'm not in your way. No. I didn't think so. I mean, there's not a whole lot of height here, but it's just.
I can just So before I go into the ethics tonight, just wanted to start out, first I have a certificate to bring. So one of your fellow board members, Jessica DeSico, was recently elected into the Morris County School Board Association as part of their executive committee. So just wanted to extend the certificate to her. Benefits, the Morris County School Board Association is a group that provides training and opportunities for all of the board members in Morris County to come together and have learning experiences. So they have 5 meetings a year, and so part of what this group does is helps to determine what those topics are, find the speakers and things. Tonight, boards are required to go through the Code of Ethics and have ethics training annually, so a lot of boards kind of set that timing to do it right at their reorganization meeting. It allows new board members the opportunity to find out right from the beginning kind of what you're in for here, right? And just to kind of get the year started off in a positive way. So going to just kind of take the board, no, maybe this is not working. Okay. No, can I take this off here? Okay. Yep, so I'll just stand here and click from here. So the presentation has a lot of slides, so I just want to let you know I'm not going to go through all of them because a lot of them are cases of ethics findings that came this year. So, and in the presentation, we'll make sure that it's emailed to the board members as well because it has links in there so that you can click on the links to see the cases. Oops, sorry. So as we start talking about ethics, the first thing we really have to look at and think about is our relationship as board members. A lot of times board members will talk about and think about themselves as volunteers. But if we really think about what we are, we're elected public officials. And with that comes responsibility to the public that elected you and said that you have to hold the respect and the confidence of the people. Then it also talks about our conduct and said that we have to avoid conduct that would be in violation of the public's trust, and then takes us to a step further and says, even if you didn't do anything wrong, but it creates a justifiable impression among the public that the trust is being violated, that's really the standard that you're held to as a board member. And I know I had one board member say, Charlene, sometimes I feel like I have one hand tied behind my back. And I said, and in a way you do, right? Because you are responsible to the Code of Ethics and the School Ethics Act all the time in everything that you do. So as we think about ethics and the Ethics Act, have to consider that to kind of be the minimum standard that we would hold ourselves accountable to, and hope that we would have higher standards, but also importantly that we don't think about ethics as a negative, but kind of think about it as guidelines. How are the guidelines that we can best do this job and serve the public? So the School Ethics Commission kind of gives us some standards and then a way to kind of uniformly maintain those standards. So as we go through the School Ethics Act, it has pretty much 4 components of looking at the Code of Ethics, our mandatory training, times that we have to recuse ourselves, and then disclosure statements that we have to fill out. So the enforcer of the School Ethics Act is the School Ethics Commission. They're a 9-member board, kind of similar to what we are. They're appointed by the governor for a 3-year term. maximum of 5 from any one political party. But to me, what's significant is the fact that the majority, 5 of them, are non-school officials. And then also right now for almost all of last year, so there's 2 board seats, and both of those seats have been vacant almost the whole last year. So there's been no board member representation on the School Ethics Commission last year. And of the 2 administrator seats, 1 of them is vacant. So they've been going through pretty much all of, I'm sure they're probably waiting for the next governor to come in and make their appointments. But so for the whole past year, then there's only been, 6 people on the School Ethics Commission. And we'll see why that's important in just a minute. I talked about those financial disclosure statements and also relative disclosure statements. So these just essentially identify sources of income, any relatives we might have, anything that would pose a conflict to us as school officials in carrying out our duties. And these are public, public records that are on the School Ethics Commission's website. So we know then that as board members, we are subject to mandatory training. But one of the things so maybe we don't always realize is that we are the only elected public officials in the state who have mandatory training. But when you think about the importance of the work that we're doing with people's students and children and money, it's important then that we're trained in that work. So one of the changes that happened last year was for new board members. The state said, we consider this work to be so important that we want to make sure that you hit the ground running. So they changed the requirement that instead of new board members, similar to anyone else that has to do mandatory training, had a full year to complete it. Last year it was changed and said, okay, new board members, we want to get you up and going. So it was changed now to the first 90 days of board service that you need to complete your mandatory training. And then for board members in their second year of board service, you have to take governance 2, and we changed the content of it for this year. It used to be finance and the labor relations piece, but we were finding that there were so many board members that had questions about policy and thought it would be helpful for board members to have training in that area. So we've now added the policy to governance 2 and moved the labor piece down to governance 3 for board members that are in their 3rd year of board service. And then governance 4 is for board members who are reelected or reappointed after you've served 1 term, and then you're coming back on the board again. Then every year following your reelection or reappointment, you need to take governance 4. And it really doesn't matter if you've been on the board 20 years. Every time you're reelected or reappointed, you need to take that. So the reason that I was saying that with the School Ethics Commission only having 6 people, why that is important is one of the things that you can do as a school official is ask the School Ethics Commission for an advisory opinion. And what that means is if you're not sure if a certain conduct or a certain situation would be a violation of the Ethics Act, you can ask their opinion, but it has to be about something that hasn't happened yet. So like a perfect example, there was a board a couple of years ago that had a high school senior elected to their board, still in high school. So think about, so before this person was seated, the other board members are like, well, what happens if we're going to talk about one of his teachers or his friends or a class that they're in? And so they asked for an advisory opinion. And the School Ethics Commission said, well, we're not going to treat this student any different than we would anyone else. What would be a conflict for you would be a conflict for that person. If the School Ethics Commission feels that the rest of us would benefit from that advice, 6 of them can vote to make it public. So we went all year without any advisory opinions being released. And then as we were putting this presentation together, I'm like, this is great, I'm going through this, and all of a sudden in December, like 12 of them were dumped. So they finally had their 6 people that were at the meeting. So that's kind of essentially saying what this is about, and then saying that you can only ask for an advisory opinion. This was a change that was made that only a school official can ask for it, and only about people in your district. You couldn't ask for an advisory opinion about the conduct of someone else in another district. It said that you have to look at existing opinions and see if there's one already out there about your situation, rather than just go ahead and ask for one. So these are, like I said, I'm not going to go through all these. So these are, then there's 2 slides of these are the ones that then came out in December. So I'm just going to go through a couple of them. So the second one, because it kind of has changed the way that we look at negotiations and conflicts, and saying that before it used to be that if you had a relative that worked in the district that was in a same or similar statewide union, then you weren't able to participate. So then here was a situation where someone said, okay, my aunt works in the district, but she's not a member of the union. So now the School Ethics Commission came back and said, okay, well, we're still going to consider you to be conflicted, because people that are not in the union, a lot of times the benefits that they get are derived from what the union has negotiated, and then other people's contracts and things are kind of linked, or there's a nexus to that. So said, now then we're kind of expanding that time then of when you would have to recuse yourself. I'm going to go down to the last one, and there are 2 board members that opened an ice cream store in town. Probably not getting much business today, right? But and so anyhow, the question was, like, you know, could the PTO come in and say, like, we want you to host a fundraiser for us? And the School Ethics Commission said that that would be considered a conflict, because their ice cream store might get some kind of a benefit from that. If people are coming in the store, if the school's advertising it for them. So even though you think you're doing it on behalf of the PTA, you think you're doing something good, essentially saying that at the end of the day, you could potentially be receiving a benefit. So you wouldn't be able to do like your own fundraiser, you know, a separate fundraiser, but like, let's say, you know, a lot of times, like when you go to the school play and they've got like the booklet that has all kinds of advertisements and things in it, said that that would be okay for you to advertise in something that's open to everybody to advertise in. And then said, and also too, and what happens if some of the students, or the high school students in town, want a job at our ice cream store? And said, okay, you know, you can hire them, you can't treat them any differently than you would anyone else that was applying. And if any situations came before the board that involved those students, that you would have to recuse yourself from any discussion. So this one here, again, is some more, but I wanted to point your attention to the second to bottom one. So here's a situation where a board member worked in the district and the superintendent fired them. So before they were on the board, so they were an employee, superintendent fired them, they get on the board and have kind of, you know, made it kind of their personal mission to get rid of the superintendent. They had a petition that they were passing around, actually put up billboards in town asking to get rid of the superintendent. So the superintendent pretty much said that it would pretty much suggest that this person could not fairly evaluate them, right? And so while I have heard of situations like this where someone has asked for advice from the board attorney would say, yep, like I agree, they couldn't fairly participate in issues related to the superintendent, this is the first time that we've seen it in writing from the School Ethics Commission. So we just looked at advisory opinions that could only be requested by a school official, but in terms of an ethics complaint, anyone can file an ethics complaint. And so one of the things that the School Ethics Commission said is that we are going to consider that the lens that we're going to look at in looking at these complaints is what would would a reasonable person believe that the act has been violated? So it's not what do you think you did something wrong, or do you think you could have done this without being conflicted, but saying we're going to say what could a reasonable member of the public consider in looking at this situation. Whoops. So that the School Ethics Commission can recommend penalties, and so they recommend them to the Commissioner of Education. The Commissioner makes the final decision. More often than not, the Commissioner goes with the School Ethics Commission's recommendations, but not always. So the minimum penalty is a reprimand, which is just kind of like a verbal hand slap that says, yep, you did something wrong. The next one, censure, is a little more formal in that a resolution's read the state, it's read at your board meeting. And then when you just went through your Open Public Meetings Act notice tonight and you talked about all the places that you post your meeting notice, that resolution would need to be posted there as well. And last year when the School Ethics Commission made some changes, they made some changes to like the penalties for training and disclosure statements and said, okay, if you don't get those done in time, that's the minimum penalty. Censures, the minimum, that's going to be our starting point, because we will have given you enough notices to get it done. So I'm happy to say as of today, there's only 2 board members in Morris County that haven't finished their 2024 mandatory training yet, but we're still working on them. So, and then the next one could be, you could be suspended, and it's usually like in 30-day increments, or can be removed from the board. So it's almost impossible for us to remove one of the members. You know, you can only do it if they miss 3 or more meetings without good reason. So only the School Ethics Commission is the one that can essentially remove a member. So some of the things we've been talking about applied to both board members and administrators, but the Code of Ethics is one of those things that applies to board members only. So the top part is like the tenet of the code, and then the bottom part are the standards. So like if someone were to file ethics charges, say against a board member and said that they violated A, then the evidence that the School Ethics Commission would look at would say, we compare your evidence to this standard, and how does it match up? So most of the, many, probably 75%, if not more, cases are dismissed, and a lot of times it's not because the person didn't do something wrong, but whoever was filing the charges didn't provide evidence that aligned with the standard of, you know, the charge that they were filing. So just going to kind of quickly go through this. So this first one here kind of essentially talks about the fact that we are like the state's boots on the ground, and that we are the ones responsible for carrying out at the local level the state's laws, rules, and regulations. And I would say that before COVID, we had a really hard time coming up with examples of what this could look like. And then as the mandates and the mask mandates and other mandates started coming down that board members were required to implement at the local level, this is what held you accountable to doing that. This next one talks about us, you know, the kind of the lens that we look at in making decisions, and the importance of it being to benefit all children. So if, you know, if we think about the fact that, you know, people can come and talk to us and have concerns about a particular school, a situation, a grade, when you're sitting on this side of the board table, you have to say, okay, you know, I understand where you're coming from, but the lens that I make decisions through is, how does this impact every single student in the Washington Township schools? Because that's who I'm responsible for. So we need to make sure that that's always what's the basis of our decisions. This next one is the state starting to tell us what our role is, saying, okay, board members, this is your work, this is your lane. Your lane is policy making, planning, and appraisal. That's what you do. That's your responsibility. And then, but then also saying, you know, to only do that after you've consulted those who will be affected by them. So that's typically why we have 2 readings on a policy. The first reading puts the policy out there, and then now anyone can come back to the board and say, okay, board, just so you know, this is how this policy impacts me. So you've now given them the right to do that before you vote the second time then to finalize and adopt the policy. Next one talks about kind of New Jersey School Board's mantra, right? That we don't run the schools, we just make sure they're well run. And how do we do that? By policy making, planning, and appraisal, right? But also importantly says together with my fellow board members. So continuing to emphasize that team concept, and that, you know, as individuals, you know, we don't have any authority. Our authority comes together with our fellow board members. So, and this is what holds us accountable in this next one, of saying that we're not going to take independent action. We're not going to go out and do things that could compromise the board. And so this then holds us accountable. And really, you know, kind of makes us understand that the way we make a difference is not what we're doing outside or away from the board table, but as you're sitting at this table together as a team, how are you contributing to this team? How are you helping this be a stronger team? So that when you have dialogue, when you have discussions, how are you helping when the board comes and, you know, makes that that majority decision? How is it a better decision because of what you have helped participate in at the board table? Next one talks about the fact, the importance of making sure that we, you know, stay impartial, and that we don't use the schools we don't get any benefit, we don't use it for any benefit of anyone else. To me, this kind of goes back to the all students, right? Of regardless if you were running for the board and you made promises or anything, that once you get here, once you sit on this side of the board table, all of your decisions, all your actions should be based on students and, you know, not for other reasons. So, oops. Next one talks about the fact that as board members, we know that we're a public body, we do our work in public, but the state has identified 9 different reasons that we can go into executive session, and they're typically to protect the rights of students, protect the rights of staff, protect the legal rights of the district, and saying that when you go into executive session, that those conversations, you know, are confidential, and that we are held accountable to keeping them confidential. And sometimes we don't always realize like the significance of that. I mean, a couple of years ago, there was a board member who was found to be in violation, that they shared some kind of a student issue with their family, kind of just sitting around the dinner table, shared something about a student. Their family member went onto social media, posted something about it, turned out to be very damaging and hurtful to the student. So sometimes you might just think you're making a comment or having a conversation, but recognize the importance of the information that you have and how, you know, what an impact it can have. So you really have to be mindful of that. The other thing this one holds us accountable to is providing accurate information. That, you know, the School Ethics Commission said, okay, board members, you know, the state or the public considers all of the information that you receive, so that if you say something about the school district, it must be true, right? Because based on the information you have. So this then is what holds us accountable then to providing accurate information. This next one makes it clear that as a board, we don't hire, we don't fire. That's the work, you know, the recommendations come from the superintendent, the chief school administrator. It's saying that we're going to vote, we have to consider those and vote to appoint the best qualified person. So just kind of helping make that distinction of what our role is in this process. This one says that we have to support and protect school personnel in their proper performance of their duties. And this is becoming more and more important with social media. So now it's not only on the ball field, it's not while you're sitting at the board table, but also on social media. I mean, a couple of years ago, there was a board member that had a blog, and for whatever reason, one of the teachers was one of their favorite topics on their blog, and, you know, said, I don't know why we ever gave this person tenure, talked about like we're paying them too much, and just like making all these comments until finally the teacher had had enough and filed ethics charges against them. So the last one here talks about the fact that from the board's perspective, you know, call the board kind of the court of last resort, and saying that we can't get involved in situations, we can't act on complaints until after failure of an administrative solution. So as much as people want to stop you and you know, think that you can be the one to help them, this is essentially saying that we can't. What we can do is that we understand the chain of command, and we can refer them to the person that can most help them. But sometimes 2 people will even come to the board meeting and think, okay, I'm going to go right to the board and, you know, going to come and get my answer. But this is kind of saying that the board can't do that, right? That you have to make sure that there's been failure of administrative solution. Earlier in this year, I was at a board meeting. The board was in executive session on a HIB discussion, so I'm sitting out the hallway, and there's all these parents sitting out there. And about an hour later, we start talking, and they're like here from 4th grade class, and they're like upset about something. I'm like, well, did you talk to the teacher? No. Did you talk to the principal? No. I'm like, okay, well then the boards can't do anything really to help you until you've gone through the chain of command. And they're like, why didn't we have this conversation an hour ago, right? That could have saved some time. But just kind of, you know, to make that point that this is what makes sure that, you know, people go through the process, and that we can help them do that. So these are cases related to the Code of Ethics. So again, I'm not going to go through all of them, but just wanted you to see, like when you see like the letters in parentheses, that's kind of the tenet then of the Code of Ethics that was violated. So like say in the first one, there was a board member, there was a staff member that would come to the board meetings, come into the microphone and make a public comment, and the board member and the staff member were just like kind of butting heads about a certain issue. And the board member felt like this staff member was like personally attacking him. So the board member called the principal that this staff member in the building, this staff member worked at, and said, just so you know, I'm so-and-so, I'm a member of the board, and I feel like your staff member is attacking me. And so they filed ethics charges and essentially said that he was taking independent action that could compromise the board, and said like he doesn't have the right to silence and discourage. This person was coming to the microphone as a member of the public. You don't have the right to call somebody's employer, and and saying by calling their employer you could get them in trouble in the workplace and it could compromise the integrity of the board. So I'm just going to kind of flip through these, and here's another one, a board member whose child had a child in the district. There was a HIPAA investigation against the child. There was some code of conduct violation in the child's record. Board member wanted to get that removed, was harassing the superintendent, called the board attorney, sent something, was reaching out to each of the board members individually, trying to get it overturned, and kind of said, okay, like that you're going beyond your role of policy making, planning, and appraisal. By you reaching out, you're trying to run the schools, and then also saying that you were taking independent action by calling the board attorney and by calling the board members individually. That's not something that any other member of the public has the right to do. So just kind of considering from that context. Like I said, I'm not going to go through all of these, and like I said, there's links on those cases so that you can go ahead and read them. So one of the things that we started talking about last year was kind of that distinction between recusing yourself versus abstaining. So we added the School Ethics Commission definition of recusal, which is saying that you're formally disqualifying and removing yourself from participating in discussion and vote. So sometimes board members, if you know that you have a conflict and you know that you're not supposed to vote on something, a lot of times it was common to just say, and I'm abstaining from this. But one of the kind of the advice that we got is that you can abstain for many reasons. It can be, I wasn't at the last meeting, or I don't feel like I have enough information, or you even don't even have to explain why you're abstaining. But if you are not going to vote because you have a legal conflict, that the records then should reflect that distinction between you not voting, not because you're choosing not to vote, but because you can't vote. So when you find yourself in a situation that you are legally unable to vote and participate in, then it is suggested that instead of saying I abstain from this matter, you say I recuse myself from this matter. So then the minutes are reflecting a distinction between you in optional, I don't want, I'm abstaining, versus I'm not voting because I can't. So things that you would be abstaining, or things that would identify when you would abstain, or when you would recuse yourself from, would be if there was a benefit to you as a school official or to your immediate family member, for a business interest, if there was any situation that would provide an unwarranted privilege, advantage, employment, any financial involvement, any financial gain. So those are all reasons then that you would use that recusal. So in saying you can't participate in discussion and vote. So as we said, like a benefit, so the School Ethics Commission then gives a definition of a benefit of saying a direct or indirect advantage, profit, privilege, or gain, whether personal, financial, or other. And one of the important things they said is that, again, that standard that we're going to use is not your perception, like, no, I think I can vote on that, I think I could be objective, but saying what would a reasonable member, what would be the perception of the public about that situation, not what do you think. And here's just an example of a superintendent that was found guilty, just to kind of see how easy that this can be to happen. So how the superintendent would make recommendations, you'd say, based on the superintendent's recommendation, we're going to hire these people or approve these people, and there was a substitute list of 160 names on them. One of those names was the acting superintendent's son. Said she didn't even realize that her son's name was in that list. And so she, that the son's name was included in the superintendent's recommendation. So someone filed ethics charges and said due to the son's financial involvement, it could reasonably be expected to impair her objectivity. So again, just kind of different cases. So these cases then are cases that would have to do with conflicts and times when board members participated in something that they shouldn't. So this one is kind of similar to the ice cream store where a board member had a business where they made like t-shirts and spiritware, and again that the PTA was going to do some kind of a fundraiser, and he volunteered to use his company to even donate the product. And again, said no, and because of that benefit, and he was emailing back and forth with the principal to help promote it, and so saying, that exchange as well. So again, just kind of recognizing the levels of what conflicts can be. So the School Ethics Commission also identifies for us like relationship definitions, like when we talked about the prohibited acts and said you are a member of your immediate family, so that's identified as a spouse, partner, or dependent child residing in your same household. In a minute, we're going to talk about relatives, and so saying that's a bigger, broader definition, and almost every kind of relative, I think we identified except cousin is in there, but there have even been School Ethics Commission cases where someone was found guilty when a cousin was involved because they have the term other. And so in saying even if someone doesn't fit in these definitions, but we still think that there was some kind of a benefit or advantage, then you can still be found guilty through that catch-all term. So essentially saying that you can't hire the relative, so that big broad definition of a board member or of the superintendent, and saying that if your relative is already in the district, by the time you get on the board, then you are not able to participate in any matters concerning the superintendent or any supervisors in the chain of command between your relative, can't evaluate the superintendent, couldn't be involved in a search, and if you were the superintendent, you couldn't exercise any authority over your relatives. So this one talks about then the impact of negotiations, and so that is why this chart got changed this year, because of that earlier advisory opinion we looked at with kind of that nexus of the, not being in the bargaining unit, but being impacted by the bargaining unit's outcomes. So kind of essentially saying that if you have anyone that works in the district, you can't participate typically wouldn't be able to participate in negotiations at all. If you or a member of your immediate family are in a similar statewide union, then you are not able to take part in the negotiations committee while the board is negotiating. You can't hear any of the updates or anything. But once the board is done, the salary guides are done, the memorandum of agreement's done, then you can vote on the final contract. And then in that bigger, broader definition of a relative, even if that works in another district somewhere, essentially saying that you're fine to both participate on the committee and vote absent any other conflicts. And so those conflicts would be if there was any linkage, or like if your relative, and even give an example, if your relative had heightened union involvement where they were working, that might be a factor as well. Also looked at, one of the opinions or cases that came out from this year talked about a board member who was getting endorsements from the local union. So they pretty much said, while they were campaigning for the board, and said that you would not be able to participate in negotiations for at least a year after that, and said, one of the factors that matters is if you got any financial contributions with the intent to influence you. So this one was a new one that came out last year that we talked about, and it was the first time that we'd ever seen the School Ethics Commission rule on impacts to what committee you can serve on if you have a relative that works in the district. So in this case, there was a board president who had a child that worked in the district, and so typically the board president, in most boards, they also task the board president with identifying who to pick, who to assign to committees. So said you not only would not be able to assign anyone, and you also could not sit on any committees that might touch upon your family members, and said including personnel, negotiations, instruction, and finance. To me, that doesn't leave too many right after that, but just kind of saying there just can't be any connection or overlap. So last year there was a couple of cases where board members had followed the advice of their board attorney, but were found guilty by the School Ethics Commission. So they said, okay, you can't use advice of counsel as a defense of, to get yourself out of it, but said it could mitigate, lessen the penalty that you might get. But said there's also some conditions to that you can't just say, well, I followed the advice of the board attorney, saying, okay, but did you talk to the attorney before this happened? Did you, did you give the attorney all the facts? Like there's kind of 4 different conditions that they outlined here before you would be eligible to kind of use that. So one of the other areas too, as board members, we often, get our start in schools by volunteering. So now that we're on the board, how does that look different? So one of the things that the School Ethics Commission said is that, okay, the two prongs we're going to look at is what is your involvement with staff and students? Like how often are you in the building? What's the frequency that you're interacting? And then what authority do you have to give and receive directions and orders to staff and students? And we're going to consider both of those things. And so sometimes board members say, okay, I hear what you're saying, but like how, I'm not quite making the connection. So the School Ethics Commission said, okay, well, let's look at C, where you said I can find my board action to policy making, planning, and appraisal. If I'm in the building all the time, then, and I've got regular contact, then I'm acting beyond those duties. Said I'm not supposed to administer the schools. Well, if I'm giving and receiving directions and orders from staff and becoming directly involved in things, then maybe now I am administering the schools in some way, right? And then also saying not take any private action that could compromise the board, and saying it could kind of blur that line between a staff member being a colleague, when now, and also blur your responsibility when you're a school official. And said, what happens to it? You're participating in negotiations or voting on contracts and salaries of the person that you're working so closely with. So that's kind of, the justification for why the School Ethics Commission has made these determinations. So here's a couple examples of, there was a board member whose spouse worked in the district, was in charge of the school plays. This board member would help his wife with the plays. And so the School Ethics Commission came back and said, like, okay, like that's too much time. With you think of all the rehearsals and the time with students, is that that's too much time spent. Someone had a club. It was like a coin collecting club with students. And the School Ethics Commission came back and said, okay, like you're meeting every week with these students. Like, again, we would find that to be too much. In this case, that person actually chose to get off the board rather than give up their club time. And then this was a case that actually happened this year. There was someone who was a volunteer football coach, not on the board yet. Board had a vacancy, appointed this person to the board. There's 1 month left in football season. So the person chose to continue to be a volunteer school coach. Someone filed ethics charges against him, and the School Ethics Commission said, okay, like, yeah, that is a violation. You did something wrong, but like football season was over in a month, so they didn't impose any penalty to the person. So again, the distinction would be that you can be a coach for a rec team that uses the school's facility, say, but you couldn't be a volunteer coach of the school team, because the rec team has its own bylaws, it has its own budget, it's a separate kind of organization. So just kind of making that distinction. And then some of the examples of things where people asked for advisory opinions, where the School Ethics Commission said, yep, these things would be okay, was like, one-time or infrequent things like reading, like on Dr. Seuss Day, chaperoning a field trip. Someone was helping the marching band load and unload the equipment. And then someone else had asked, they were the executive officer of the PTA, they're a homeroom mom, said, okay, yep, you can do all of those things as long as you do it within those 2 prongs of not being too enmeshed in the building and not giving and receiving order and direction to staff. So. And then kind of the last part of what I'm going to talk about tonight is social media. We continue to see more and more ethics cases related to that. And so, getting more guidance about that. And essentially saying that the School Ethics Commission now is going to consider the content, the substance, and the context of the statement. And saying, so basically, they say content matters. And so saying, would a reasonable person believe that the statement was made in your official capacity as a board member? So essentially, like saying it doesn't matter if you use a disclaimer or this or that, we're going to look at the content and we're going to look at determining, was it made in your official capacity? And saying, is there a nexus between your role on the board and the social media? So like, here's an example of a case where a board member said, without using a disclaimer on social media, talked about a policy she wanted to abolish, said it was reviewed by board council and opposed by 4 board members. So there, regardless what she said, it's clear that that post was, the context was in relation to her duties and her role on the board. Whereas in the other one where they said there was no nexus, someone just had shared a campaign image of 3 people running to the board on their personal page without any comment. So it would be hard for someone to say that you were doing that in your official capacity as a board member. So the School Ethics Commission does recommend that we use a disclaimer, and they have suggested language here, and just kind of wanted to make a point that a couple years ago there was a board member that was found guilty and said he only used half of the disclaimer. So he used the half that said, this is me, I'm saying this in my own, this is me talking on my own behalf, but didn't say the second half of, I'm not speaking on behalf of the board and I'm not authorized to speak on behalf of the board. So said that it made it unclear then what he was posting, that it gave the appearance that it was about someone who endorsed candidates, instead it could give the appearance that the whole board endorsed those candidates. So, and then in terms of, kind of looking at the disclaimer, saying, that the disclaimer is not a blanket protection. So saying, again, they're going to look at that content. And saying, but you don't have to parrot it exactly, but just to kind of, again, goes back to if there's any nexus between what you posted and your role on the board. And then also for people that are running for the board, it would be typical to have a social media campaign page. So kind of saying when you get on the board, you got to shut that down, and saying that you can't have any kind of a social media account that identifies you as a board member. So you can, post things on your personal account, but not anything that's you as a board member. I just wanted to, okay, yep. So, and then the last piece of it was just, every once in a while the School Ethics Commission says something good about us, right? So just said that they want to, again, the importance of looking at this work from the context of how much time, skill, effort you're giving back to the community in the way you serve, and saying that this service is among the most important ways that someone can volunteer and engage with your community. And I think for those of you that have been doing this for a while, you understand that completely, and just kind of know how valuable it is to be able to, to help the children of your community. So wanted to thank all of you, see if anyone had any questions for me. So a part of what I don't know if you've handed them out, is a sign-off sheet, right, that the board has to sign for essentially saying that we have gone through this training, and wanted to thank you. And I did clear the room, right? Yeah, so just wanted to thank you. And good night, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Shirley.
Thank you very much, Shirley. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Night.